Good morning. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome you all here to this month's Wake Up West Coast. My name is Jody Ozarski. I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the West Coast Chamber. And it is awesome to be back with you again this month. And whether you're joining us here in person or logging in online, we're just so glad that you're here to start your day with us. We couldn't do what we do without the generous support of our sponsors, and today we are privileged to be sponsored by GMB Architecture and Engineering. If you have been in this community for very long, you have clearly seen a building that they have designed. They've been here for over 53 years, and maybe my favorite project that they've ever done is the West Coast Chamber building that I have the privilege of working in each and every day. GMB is all in on education, so this is a perfect event for them to sponsor. They believe that investing in our future and creating learning ecosystems, they can provide opportunity for all and make the world a better place. That sounds like a pretty great thing to believe in to me. A great example of that vision is what you see over at the Grand Rapids Community College Lakeshore campus. This embodies that partnership that GMB has with the chamber, educational institutions, our community, and the need to create sustainable economies, transform communities, and provide greater access to education. Along with many of our educational opportunities and institutions, GMB has been a longtime partner with both of today's presenters, the ODC Network and Ottawa Area ISD. GMB's work with the Ottawa Area ISD includes the expansion of facilities for the culinary arts, agriculture and animal science, and heavy equipment mechanics programs at the Career Line Tech Center. GMB also has numerous partnerships with the ODC Network, including the recently dedicated Window on the Waterfront Nature Play Park in downtown Holland. I don't know if you've had an opportunity yet to go and visit that park. It is phenomenal, world class. I just heard Travis say as he stopped by over the weekend, he never stopped and had less than 37 people at the park at any given time. That is an amazing addition to our community. So thank you, GMB, for your part in that. They're an integral partner in creating opportunities for all students and lifelong learners. So thank you. Thanks for your partnership with the Chamber and the great things that you continue to do, not only for the Chamber, for our community as a whole. And so now it's time that we're going to kick off this morning. And if you have been to a chamber event before, you know that one of the things we're always going to do is create opportunities for you to make some new connections. So we're going to do that right now at your tables. I'd like you to take just a couple of minutes and go around the table. And if each person takes a minute to introduce themselves with their name, their organization, and based on today's topic, your favorite subject back in elementary school. So go ahead and get started and chat and get to know some new people at your table.
There's brain-based science that tells you this is what it should be. You're a moderator in the middle here, huh?
I don't think so.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back and good morning. I hope you have made some great chamber connections. I'm Jane Clark, our chamber president, and again, so happy to welcome you to this edition of Wake Up West Coast. And I'm joined today with two of my very dear friends and colleagues, Kyle Mayer from the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District and Travis Williams with the ODC Network. And we're here today to have a conversation. So you're going to play a part of today's program as well. I've got a few introductory questions, but we're going to pause and ask for your questions as we go along. So what we're talking about today is our talent pipeline. How are we preparing our kids for their future in our community? We're going to focus on three areas. During the pandemic, we certainly had to respond, but how did we grab new opportunities? what's the landscape of school partnerships happening in our community? And what's the vision we collectively have for long-term student success? So I think it's going to be a fascinating look into what's going on in our education world today. And so to get us started, I'm going to introduce Kyle Mayer. Kyle is the superintendent at the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District. So I'm going to ask him to share just briefly a little bit about what is the ISD and a quick summary of what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we've been faced with over the recent months. So Kyle, welcome.
Thank you, Jane. Can you hear me? Good morning. I'm Kyle Mayer. I'm superintendent of the ISD, and my favorite class in elementary school was gym. So I'm not sure if that's a good sign or not. But I'm so honored to be here with all of you this morning, and thank you, Jane, for the invitation. It's been great getting to know you better. I'm finishing up my first year in this role, and the Ottawa ISD, for anyone who may not be familiar, is a service agency to the school districts in the Ottawa area. We say Ottawa area because we support all of the schools in Ottawa County, but also Saugatuck and Hamilton and Holland, which have some boundaries in Allegan County. So we say Ottawa area rather than Ottawa County ISD. We support directly or indirectly 55,000 students that go to school every day in the Ottawa area. And there are 11 traditional public school districts, and we also support several private, Christian, and public charter schools as well. And so we support schools and learning in the areas of general education. We consult with administrators and teachers in all of the school districts in the Ottawa area to improve teaching and learning. We also offer direct programming to students in areas such as career and technical education, if you're familiar with the Career Line Tech Center, which is located at the intersection of Port Sheldon and 31, and also in the area of special education. So that's in a nutshell who we are and what we do. We do have a couple board members here today. Would you please raise your hand if you're an Ottawa area board member? All right, so you can ask them more about what we do and who we are later, and offer your support, hopefully. So thank you for being here, board members, this morning. Jane, you asked about challenges in the COVID period or in the pandemic period. We have had a number of challenges, and one of them is turnover in the profession of education. You know, I mentioned just a minute ago that there's 11 traditional local school districts in the Ottawa area. We have soon to be 6 new superintendents in the first year, counting me. So Grand Haven soon will have a new superintendent, Holland, West Ottawa, Zeeland, Jenison. And it's not just superintendents, it's administrators, it's teachers, it's school bus drivers, it's every level. Just like, seems like almost any industry in the world today, we're having talent issues in education. And so it's a challenge. I think COVID has contributed to that. Lots of people who could retire did retire, and there's not a pipeline of educators maybe like there used to be to replace those positions. So that's been a challenge. Another challenge has just been keeping staff and students safe. We're operating a business that's people coming together, and typically in enclosed spaces, except for Travis is going to give us an alternative example. But we're bringing people together, and all the mitigation strategies have been a challenge to keep people safe. And another thing is to keep school open for in-person learning. In Ottawa area, I feel proud about what we've done because we feel it's so important to keep school open for in-person learning and wherever possible not switch to remote. I think we should all be proud that last year in the Ottawa area, the average school district, on average, all of our school districts were open for 165 days of in-person learning. Thank you. Thank you. That was a huge effort, not just by educators, but all the partners in this room and beyond. It's been a huge community effort to keep school open for in-person learning. When we saw other large districts and counties around the state, some were remote for the entire school year last year. And what an impact that will have on the children in those communities. And the third challenge that I thought of is just navigating disagreements. We all know topics like whether or not kids should wear face masks in schools, or a number of other issues are contentious, and people have strong feelings and disagreements, and school administrators tend to find themselves in the middle of those conversations. So listening, honoring, respecting what community members have to say But then ultimately, we have to follow the rules and the laws and keep our schools operating within the law so that we stay out of trouble, and we've done that. But with challenges, I'm sorry, am I taking too much time, Jane?
Keep going.
Okay.
Get to the
I'm going to wrap up
opportunities.
here. Are opportunities coming later, or should I talk
Go
about
ahead,
those now?
opportunities. We're all about that.
So there are some silver linings with COVID, and all of those challenges I talked about bring with them opportunities. In the Ottawa area, we're so fortunate. For example, I mentioned the number of new superintendents, but when we post those positions, we get great leaders. Brandon Graham in Jenison, Brandy Lynn Mendham in Zeeland, Shani Keelan here in Holland, Tim Bearden in West Ottawa, and Scott Grimes, who's taking over in Grand Haven. They are, and I get a chance to go around the state and meet superintendents everywhere. They are the best of the best. So we bring new leadership in, and we can be confident as a community that we have great superintendents and teachers, administrators, all levels, filling those positions. Secondly, the pandemic allows us to reimagine education. So we had to do some things differently, and we learned some lessons. We're thinking more about mental health of staff and students now than we were before, and we're proactively working to address needs like that. Broadband access. We realized when we had to switch to remote that not everybody can do remote because they don't have internet at home, and we're working with county and other partners to address that issue. And also little things like parent-teacher conferences. I mean, raise your hand if you had to attend a parent-teacher conference in the last year. Almost everybody says it's better remote. Like they like the Zoom parent-teacher conference because it's not so rushed. You have more dedicated time. You can schedule it anytime, anywhere, any place. So little things like that we can change forever. And I think we will where it makes sense to do so. And then finally, I think the pandemic, a blessing of it, is it's strengthened our community partnerships with partners like Travis and the ODC, Model Communities, United Way, Community Spoke, the Ottawa County. We've all just worked together to get through this for our kids, and I think those partnerships will sustain after the pandemic. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Kyle. What a great perspective. Thank you for your leadership in helping us meet those challenges and those opportunities. So Travis, you're the outdoor guy, and why are you up on a panel talking about education? Let's get a little perspective about what the ODC network is and your passion towards our future leaders in our community.
Sure. So, you know, I think when you look at ODC and what we do, it kind of defines exactly why I'm sitting here right now. There's two things I guess I would point at, and that is one, that children are intrinsically just wired to play and learn and explore, and that's how their brain develops and grows. And there's no better place to do that than when you're outside. And so, you know, there's all sorts of research out there that I could sit up here for hours and quote at you, and I promise I won't. But the human body, especially when it's around that age 3, 4, and 5, but growing, the brain is developing rapidly, and it's doing that through sensory stimulation. It's doing that through interaction in the environment. Sitting in a room like this under lights is not the best way to grow a brain, and we know that. So having the outdoors as your classroom, having the outdoors as your environment you're learning in is absolutely critical to brain growth and development. And it is something that has been researched, it's been proven, and we believe that every kid deserves the right to be outside for part of their learning environment, and that's what we really stand to do. And so that's one really key thing. The other thing gets to this whole community, this workforce development, the mental health side of it. So when your body's outdoors and you're interacting, your brain starts to produce different chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, and those are things that calm you down, that relax you. It's better for your mental health. It's a reason why if you go take a nice walk in the woods, you feel better. This is not new science. This is stuff that we've known for years, but we tend to put kids and we tend to put our workforces in environments where they are inside, underneath lights, in a room, you know, to the old toes and rows kind of a mantra. And if we can break that down and get kids outdoors, that's what ODC wants to do. That's what we're trying to help schools do. And it doesn't matter if you're out at the nature preserve or like we run a preschool right downtown here at right out of Pillar Church. Just being outside in your community is really critical. And that's the other part of this for us, is that if kids become ingrained and embedded in their community ecosystem, the world that they live and work and interact in, again, you're creating a connection between that child and their community and their home and environment. They're going to be more likely to want to preserve and protect their environment. They're going to be more likely to want to serve their community, care about their community, work in their community. And that is super critical too. So we have to make sure that when we're teaching a child, we're teaching the whole child and we're engaging the whole child. And that's what ODC Network tries to do. And that's why the outdoors is so critical. And we believe that that's something that we need to help all schools do. So.
Well, thank you, and you're doing an amazing job at it. So Kyle, how are our kids doing? What do we know about our achievement levels at this point in time?
That's a good question, Jane. One of the things that I think is kind of on everyone's mind right now is what was the academic impact to the pandemic to our children and our students? And when you hear that conversation, you're mostly hearing about what that's referring to is test scores. So you may or may not be familiar with, every year our students take a number of standardized tests when they go to school. And in Michigan, our state standardized test is called the M-STEP. So if I could, I'm going to share a very personal story that I think will lend itself to all of us understanding this issue. Like probably tens of thousands of parents in the state of Michigan in the last couple of weeks, my wife Missy and I, who's a teacher, got this report about our son, Ryan. This is his M-STEP scores. Ryan is a 7th grade student in Grand Haven right now, and this is last year in the spring. He took the 6th grade M-STEP in English Language Arts. And you know, I'm an administrator, his wife's a teacher. We have made sure he had the best teachers all the way up through school, and we've read to him since he was a little boy, and we've prioritized reading and writing, and he's always been proficient all the way up through grade school. But this is the first year after the pandemic. You can see the state organizes results into 4 categories: advanced, proficient, partially proficient, and not proficient. And for the first time ever, Ryan brought this report. His teacher handed it to him at school, and he brought it home, and he said, "Mom and Dad, I'm not good at reading and writing anymore." And you can see the gray shaded box in the vertical there. It says he does not meet standards. So how do I react to this as a parent, and how do we react to it on a systems level? So I've given it a lot of thought, and here's what I think about it personally. Ryan's in 7th grade. He hasn't had a standard school year since he was in 4th grade. That standard is based on results of kids who never experienced a pandemic. He did continue to make progress in his learning. He was quarantined for 70 days the last 2 school years. So he missed a half a school year, basically. He has a new appreciation now for being in school with his friends. He hated being quarantined. He loves being in school now. He did not love being in school before this. And he has the ability to catch up. And finally, Ryan bears no responsibility in my mind that he doesn't meet a standard that was set of students who never experienced what he experienced. So I think it's important for me as a parent to approach this conversation with Ryan from an asset mindset. What is he doing well? How can we move forward from here? And not to place upon him some sense of shame or guilt that he's behind. And I think we should approach the whole conversation on a systems level with educators like that. So I encourage community leaders like all of you, when you hear this conversation in the media about learning loss and how far behind our schools and our students are, have some patience. When conditions normalize, we'll catch up. But the way we approach the conversation, I think, will matter to kids, and it will actually affect how quick we can accelerate learning. And those are my feelings on that conversation.
Wow, thank you. What a very personal story. I appreciate it. It certainly gives perspective to the conversation. Travis, the ODC responded this summer with some pretty robust programs for kids this summer. You want to give us some highlights?
Yeah, I'm going to put up a slide here that just kind of helps a little bit to define what's going on. And this really feeds into what Kyle just shared, actually. So we were approached, starting kind of towards the end of the last school year about how could we help in the summer, because there were a lot of kids, or a lot of schools with concern that the kids were going to have this slide, this where they weren't proficient or they weren't meeting a standard, and what were we going to do about it? And what we've been doing for several years, we've been working with several of the schools in the area to offer summer school programs where kids could go to summer school essentially to try to work on getting caught up in areas where they weren't proficient or they needed more support. And during the pandemic year, we ended up serving 12 different school districts, over 2,000 students. And I put just 4 of them on these colored boxes there just to give you an idea. K4 summer reading program, a K6 summer English language learners literacy program. Those are kids that speak a different language and they're learning English. Project 180 was something we did with Holland Public, and then we had a summer STEM camp that we did up in Grand Haven. But you can see some of the metrics there. And really the important thing to understand here is that when these kids were given the opportunity to explore outdoors, when summer school was turned into summer camp, when they were actually going fishing and hiking and exploring and doing different experiments and projects, as well as doing their reading and writing and mathematics, look at what happened to many of them. You can see the score shot up. 100% of regular participants advanced their reading scores in that K6 summer ELL program. Why does this happen? Well, for probably the first time in a lot of these kids' careers, lives in school, all of a sudden it wasn't school anymore. It was something fun, and school was turned into a fun activity. And so we were really excited last year when Kyle and his group and a bunch of our superintendent partners in the community all came to us and said, help us create something that's going to get students to show up, that's going to get students to stay, because that's one of the problems is they start and a week or two into it, they are having fun, they don't like it, they just stop coming. How do we get them to stay? And then how can we engage them in different ways? And I think that was a major response that we had during the pandemic, was that we can help support our partners. We had their teachers from a lot of those school districts working alongside our staff, learning to teach a little bit differently and maybe a more fun and engaging way than they're used to having to do in a classroom. And we saw great results from it. So
That's awesome. Let me pause and see if we have any questions from the audience for our panelists today. Yeah, Russ. Hey, Russ, I'm going to pause you a second. We got a microphone for you.
Yeah, I believe Finland is one of the leading countries in the world today in education. What are they doing that we can learn from them?
I know a little bit about that. Their former, I think, education director for the nation is named Pasi Salzberg. And whenever I read what he attributes to why Finland, he always talks about the respect that the teaching profession is given within the country. I believe they're all pretty much master's level positions, and they have a great deal of autonomy. They have a lot less of what we call accountability in our system in terms of grading schools. I think a famous quote of his is, in our country, we don't evaluate teachers, we ask how we can help them. And you can look that up online. I think there's a different culture around the profession of education, and how they train teachers is more of a gradual release from the universities into the profession of teaching than it is what we have here. And I'm no expert on the Finnish education system, but that's what I understand to be some of the contributing factors.
I would also add they, and I know very little about this in the grand scheme of things, but their school day is a little different too. So their students go outside. Like, first of all, I don't know the exact number, but it's far less hours than what we put kids through in school. And they actually spend more time outside as well. So like hour-long breaks and things like that where they go outdoors. Even in the winter in Finland, they do that. Believe it or not, kids will still go outside. So if we adults would stop putting our kind of parameters and building boxes around things, I think you'd see better changes around here too.
I love it, Travis, when I see your little downtown preschoolers out in their snowsuits in wintertime, and I think I can just stop my griping that if they can do it, I can do it too. Yeah, Marianne.
Do you think this opens the door for the conversation of more year-round school, seeing what the slide of COVID perhaps did? And
Yes, and whether it's mandatory or optional, we're already working on that, and we're working on having that summer piece outdoors. Travis, how many additional schools in the Ottawa area, how many districts did you partner with? Maybe you're going to talk about that later. I think you have some photos in the slides, but we're working to scale up year-round school in the summer outside, not bringing them into brick and mortar schools and doing more of the traditional.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And I think one of the big opportunity zones for us is both like after school type programming as well as summer to school type programming, and looking at just how the school calendar works. There's a ton of opportunity. There's a lot of amazing organizations in this community that can partner in with our schools and help with that as well. Just disrupting what that school day currently looks like and maybe going to a different model, I think, is a really important thing.
Final thing on that is Travis and I, our organizations are jointly employing some consultants who can work with the area schools to help teachers understand how to take education outdoors, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, we have. Currently, there's, I think it's 27 different school districts that are in contract with us right now, working on some version of creating a different model around the way the school operates.
Awesome. Jennifer?
So talk a little bit about childcare and access to quality childcare. It's a challenge for our employers. A lot of moms have left the workforce, moms and dads. What are you doing to allow more access to childcare and preschool?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ironically, just last week I had the GRCC team was at the ODC looking at our preschool and talking to us, and they use the word Ottawa County has a child care desert. That's how they define us. So if we're going to be proud about our community, we should not be proud about somebody making that comment about us when they look at what we're doing. We're woefully deficient in our ability to provide child care to working families, which is a huge barrier to getting the workforce going, and that's a big problem. So our organization is working on that in a variety of different ways. It's just our small part of it, but one thing that we have done at the ODC is we actually provide childcare to all of our staff. So we actually have childcare operates at the ODC, and any employee can have their kids go to childcare at our organization. That has been a game changer for us, and I hope others will consider how they can possibly do that, because I have almost zero turnover in my organizations. When these young families that work for me have kids, they come back to work. Oftentimes we've even seen them come back to work quicker. Not that we advocate for that, but they're even more comfortable coming back sooner, 10 weeks or something after having a child, because they bring their kid to work and they can take them right into childcare. That's been a game changer. We are now currently working on a project on the north side of Holland where we're going to be adding daycare to it as well. So we're trying to do our small part to increase, child care services in the community, increase preschool opportunity in the community. We'll have almost 400 kids enrolled in preschool from our organization in the next year, with wraparound child care supporting services going with that. So that's a little bit that we're doing, but our community needs a lot more of it. And any employer out there, you can do it. It is possible to do it, and there's people that will help you if you need help. So.
You want to add anything, Kyle?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
I have a kind of a follow-up to that in regards to the whole child care issue. And so we know that there isn't access necessarily for child care, but one of the new things that's arising in general regarding the education field, thinking from, children, infant teachers up through a 12th grade teacher, is that you're starting to run into being able to fill those positions. I know recently I heard about 2 local child care facilities that are now starting to ask their families to prepare to have to keep their children at home because they don't have enough staff to be able to have children coming in. So I'm curious, since I know the OAISD and the ODC look at supporting that leadership in education, is there something you guys are currently looking at to support how we can create this respect around this education for the teachers that are infant up through 12th grade teachers?
So I'll throw one thought at that, and that's that we have, Kyle mentioned it earlier, but we are not valuing the people that are doing that work very well. So when you pay somebody $10 or $12 an hour to watch your child and be their first caregiver as well as their first teacher, that's pretty pathetic. So if we raise the pay scale, that's not going to be a problem, and I can promise you that because I have waiting lists of people trying to get jobs at our organization, and I'm paying $5, $6, $7 more an hour than any other child care facility in the county. So it's just where are you going to make your choices on what you want to invest in. So it's not a hard formula to fix it, and we've making it work. And again, if we can make it work at our little nonprofit, I got to believe other people can do it too.
I don't really have anything to add. We have our Director of Early Childhood Services, Dr. Tammy Manis at the OAISD, would be the point person, and I know she's working on this issue in a number of fronts. I know it's an uphill battle. I know there have been recent legislative changes to the compensation for pre-K, and I know some of that work is ongoing, but we definitely haven't solved the problem yet, and we're actively working on it.
Thank you. Great question. Over here, we got a question?
My name's John Jacobs, and I'm with Express Employment Professionals. And my question is can you kind of address what's going on regarding skilled trades and some of your thoughts as to helping to send people down that path in a little bit greater frequency, because that's another tremendous need within our economy.
I may walk the mic right over. Dave, you have to raise your hand. Our director of the CareerLine Tech Center, I would love for you to connect with him on that question because he can answer, and Doug Bagley as well, who is working out in business, developing customized training. The short answer is, from my perspective, is those programs are in higher demand than ever. We have 29 programs at the Career and Technical Education Center, and 27 are at capacity. Dave and I rode here together today to this meeting. We were discussing what can we do to meet the demand for career and technical education. It will be an ongoing priority for us. One thing that we're working to do is to decentralize career and technical education programming so that it can be offered out in the local districts rather than students having to come to the Tech Center. Back to my son Ryan in the example I shared earlier, I think he would be a great kid to go to the Tech Center and participate in CTE programming, but he has a fear of losing his social circle. He doesn't want to leave his friends for half the day, which is basically what our program requires at this point in time. So we need to talk about how can we get those programs out in Grand Haven Public Schools and Howland Public Schools, and that's what we're working on. Shana Carlson is here, who's actively working in that sphere as well. So that's the direction we're going, and coming up in 2 weeks, we're bringing model communities and business leaders to the Tech Center. We're going to have a half-day meeting to talk about this issue. Dave's going to highlight the opportunities and the challenges we face, and this is an ongoing conversation that we're bringing all community leaders to say, how can we scale up this program because it's so in demand and so important for our community's future.
I would just add real quick to that. So actually all three of us are a part of a group called Model Community Leadership Council. And it's really a multi-sector group of CEO types or community leaders that, we don't technically do anything, but we get together to learn about what's going on in the community, where do we have issues, and what can we do to convene a response or provide support or engagement around it. And that group of about 30 leaders from our community is actually focused directly on that topic right now. So we are working on that, and I don't have any great solution for you on that at this moment, but there's some pretty serious conversations and engagement sessions with different parts of the community going on to kind of learn and figure out what's the best path forward to do with just what Kyle said.
Great question. Russ? Hang on a second, Russ, we'll grab the microphone for you.
I guess a comment to an individual who graduated from a tech school 50 years ago. Yeah, I'm that old. And at that time, it was set up so that the 2 years rolled right into a BA qualification if that's the route I wanted to take. What can you do, or what is being done? All of us, I'm not one, the big blue and big green fans in here. But telling our kids that if you don't go on to a university, if you don't go to the University of Michigan or Michigan State or whatever it is, you're less. And so we need to do something to upgrade that image for these kids to go down a different route. A lot of them are debt-free, making a lot more money than the university graduates.
Dave, what percentage of our Career Tech Center students go on to college?
We have about over 70% that are going on to post-secondary. I mean, and that includes apprenticeships, 2-year, 4-year. At our tech center, every program has a college connection. And we always kind of say it's not one or the other, can be both. You can go into a trades program or a CTE program and go to post-secondary. And you can go right to work. And so many businesses lately have been really helping kids with their education. So the kids are much better consumers than they used to be. I'm still finding parents are still wanting that education like we would for our own kids. So there's just so many more options. I think it's important to think about when we talk about pipelines, at the end of the day, these are just high school kids. It's career exploration, and we have to provide those opportunities for them to explore and find out what fits. So that's what we're all, it's like this management. How do you get kids connected, but yet let them explore? So.
Other audience questions? Guys, talk a little bit about, you've talked about teachers and the programs you're doing. How about parents? What are the roles you'd like to see? I'm sure have a lot of parents in the room today. What's next for parents?
Well, parents are the primary educators of our children, so we need the partnership. And beyond that, I'm not sure what to say other than we want them to be actively involved. We want them to ask questions. If they have concerns, we want to hear them. The more engagement with parents, the better. And we always look for ways to enhance that.
So from our end, from a direct school engagement, we spend more of our time working in the lower end of the spectrum, so the preschool environment. And as I mentioned earlier, as we bring on our third preschool at the end of this coming year, we will have over 400 kids enrolled in preschool. And our entire program is built on a model of full family engagement. So we start with the parents. That's often who we are educating, just as much as we are working with the kids. So our preschool has, we employ a couple social workers that work in our preschool, and they do parent education classes. We do small groups with parents, all training and working with those parents to teach them how to be good parents, how to advocate for their child, how to support their child, how to deal with behavior, how to deal with social emotional development. If we don't start there and get our parents at that level, we cannot expect that to be handed off to some teacher at some point in time when there's 30 other kids in a classroom and think they're going to somehow solve all those problems. Kids spend more time with their families than they do at school. And so the amount of time the parents have to be engaged in that process has to be high. And so you need to equip the parents with that. And that's something that we're trying to inject in our program, which is a bit of a different model than what normal school looks like, but that's where we're focused. And if we can build the parents up to have them being able to ask the right questions, advocate for their child, and engage in their kids' learning development, behavioral type things, that is how we're going to get these kids more ready for school and have them better advance through the system.
Let's talk about some of our older learners. Travis, I know you do concentrate a lot of your programs on the younger learners, the child care, the preschool, the young elementary. What are some of the neat things on the horizons for some of our older kids?
I'd like to share another personal story, and the reason I'm sharing these personal stories is because I think they lend themselves to the bigger conversation. My daughter, Sarah, is in 11th grade, and she's 16 years old, so I sent her this text last week. I wanted to share it with all of you. Sarah, I'm going to text you a question, and I want you to think carefully because I'm going to share it with some people I work with. You all are some people I work with. I don't think she knew quite the scale. Someday when you are an adult and you look back on how the COVID pandemic impacted your high school experience, what are the 2 or 3 biggest impacts you will remember? Do you want them to be more positive or negative? Whatever the honest answer is. Number 1, how it affected my mental health. There was lots of times where I felt isolated and lonely, especially when I had to self-quarantine. I felt pretty helpless when I was in the middle of my sports seasons and forced to stay home, even though I was vaccinated and showed no symptoms. Although I have very strong family support system, there were many times I really just needed to have a normal high school experience. I needed to be able to have my friends, wanted to go to dances, football games, and just none of that. Doesn't really seem like that big of a deal, but it really affected me last year. Number 2, how it affected my learning. My friends and I found it really hard to sit on our computers in bed or on a couch all day and focus on the material of the class. When we returned to in-person school, I noticed lots of holes in my learning that are still affecting me today, and now we are expected to reach the standard score of an average high schooler in a normal year, which I don't believe is fair. And number 3, more positively, I will remember all of the times I got to spend with my family. We are usually pretty busy, and the time we were forced to be at home really made us closer. So I think that's a good example. Probably lots of kids are feeling that way. And one thing we're doing about it is not just to find out how my daughter is feeling and how it's affecting her learning, but we're conducting a survey of, excuse me for just a second, I think it's 8th, 10th, and 12th. 8th, 10th, and 12th, and Liz is saying 8th because you're a big partner with us in the United Way. We're conducting a survey right now of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders all across the Ottawa ISD to find out more about how they were impacted, what impacted their mental health, how it might have affected substance use, other risk behaviors. And at that website listed there below, early in the spring, we're going to have some, I think, fascinating data about how our secondary students were impacted through this pandemic. So maybe a future Wake Up West Michigan featuring some other people who can who can go deeper into this data. But what I'm trying to say is we are actively working to understand not just the academic impacts to the pandemic, but the social, emotional, mental health impacts so that we can be strategic in how to address those needs. And that's a huge community effort featuring United Way and several other partners. And so look for more information in the spring about that.
That's wonderful. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and so I want to ask both of you kind of your final message for the audience. We've got parents, grandparents, community members, employers, friends in our audience today. What's that shared message of the vision for the future you'd like to leave everyone with?
I guess what I would say is that you as parents, you have a lot to do with the success of your kids long term. And I would encourage you, if you're in a school system or if you're just a parent, if you're a business, advocate for this to be what school looks like. You still can go to school, you can still be at your building, you can still be out on campus, but when learning looks like this, it's going to be way better for your kids. And I think that's super important. And I also want to just share that, the future is going to be, made or fall apart based on how much we want to invest in what we offer our kids. And so we're currently, thanks to a little partnership with the Chamber and others, we purchased some property and we're building this entire campus on Park Township right now. And our goal is to infuse a wraparound learning childcare model with the learning model and a training center facility because our goal is that, we think that we can get more kids engaged in school, more parents educated around how their child develops and grows, and that is super critical. And the other thing that I guess I would point out, I want to share this too, because this shows you that this is the real data. But there's an 8th grade program in our general community, ELA means English Language Arts, that we worked with for multiple years. Hope College has studied this. And if you just look at the scores, we call it nature rich versus traditional. These were completely mirrored groups of students that had the same number of kids with IEPs, the same socio-demographic group of kids, evenly divided out within this group. And look at the test scores. And so we sit back and we say, how are we going to make up for kids' loss? How are we going to get school to, support these kids better? How are we going to address mental health? We know that all of these things can be addressed by simply changing how we do things. It's not adding more money to it. It's just changing how we do things. And you can see over 20% increase in test scores in this one target audience group that we've worked with. And this is third-party research that produced this. So I really hope that our future for learning, for school, can be built in this model, and it can be done anywhere. It can be done on your campus. I'm looking at Eric here. He's got Forest School running at Holland Christian right on his campus. He didn't need a 160-acre ODC to make that happen. You can do this stuff anywhere, and I think that's the future that we should be looking for.
Thank you. Kyle?
I made a few predictions for myself that I think are optimistic and realistic for what I think is going to happen. I believe we're going to move beyond the COVID phase and apply the lessons that we've learned during it. I think we're going to renew our focus on health and well-being of students as part of the integral components of what education provides to the children in our community. And I think we're going to have a conversation about equitable outcomes for all of the children we serve and set about some goals and some strategies to achieve that. I also think we're going to set some, maybe for the first time ever, I believe that in partnership with Travis and the business leaders such as Jennifer Owens and Jane who are in the room, I think we're going to set some cross-sector goals. I think we're going to have some shared goals ranging from early literacy to numeracy to the career and technical education conversation that came up earlier. I think in the past, education has worked over here and other business partners are over here. I think we're on the verge in some of the conversations we're having of setting for the first time some mutual goals and mutual strategies, and then we're going to go about the business of achieving those as a community together.
That's great. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Travis. And also thank you, Sarah and Ryan, for letting your dad tell your stories today. That was very impressive. You can see we have a lot of great things going on in this community, a lot of great leaders and great partners, and we're so appreciative of the work they're doing. I want to invite everybody back next month, Monday, December 14. Our speaker we're bringing in from Washington, D.C., her name is Pam Green, and she's going to help us with retention strategies to reverse the Great Resignation. So another talent-focused program, retention strategies to reverse the Great Resignation. We think it's going to be fabulous, and I hope you all join us. In the meantime, it's almost Thanksgiving. We're very thankful for you, your role in our community, and we hope you have a great holiday. Make it a great day.